Welcome back. Welcome back to Sasquatch Revealed opening day speakers. Do we have some new people here for this presentation? Okay, someone who knows all about the museum, right? Okay, so I'll just do a quick rehashing of what I've done before, which is, hi, my name is Erin Quinn Valcho. I am the museum curator for the Lacey Museum. And if you haven't had a chance yet to head over to the Lacey Museum and see our main exhibit, you should totally do that. Plus, we have 2 exhibits here at City Hall, and you should check those out too, because who doesn't want a selfie with a 9-foot skeleton? Am I right? Exactly. We have all kinds of information over here about the Lacey Museum, our 2019 events. We're taking pre-orders for these beauties. And there are also treats, so help yourself. With that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to our next speaker, Paul Graves. Paul is a Sasquatch researcher from Wenatchee and an avid outdoorsman. Graves has been researching Sasquatch sightings and searching evidence throughout Washington and the Pacific Northwest since 1988. He has appeared on several television and radio shows, including Seattle's KOMO TV Northwest Afternoon. He has assisted with or appeared in 3 History Channel episodes of Monster Quest, as well as shows on A&E, Animal Planet, and National Geographic. Please join me in welcoming Paul Graves.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? No? Sound? Check. Check. Can you hear me?
They'll hear you out there.
All right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. Maybe I need to use the microphone. Check, check, check. This kind of works. It's just soft. Okay. I got a pretty good voice, so you should be able to hear me. First of all, thank you. That was a great introduction. Thank you. So I don't really need to introduce myself, but I appreciate you all coming here and taking the time to listen to what I have to say and what I've found over the years. So thank you for allowing me to share what I've found on this subject. So yeah, I've been researching since the late 80s, about the year I met my wife, Becky, and live over in the Wenatchee area of eastern Washington, north central Washington. There's a rich history in the area of Wenatchee. The Wenatchee Indian name for the Bigfoot was called the Chonato, which means night people. It's translated to night people. The first inhabitants there's Mission Ridge. There's a large ridge, north-facing ridge that rises up behind Wenatchee. And the first inhabitants that came there would go up and hunt up there, would come across what they called the Old Man of Mission Ridge. It was a wrinkled, hairy-looking thing. They didn't know what it was, but they called it the Old Man of Mission Ridge. So that's just a little bit of history. Today, I really want to, this is my main PowerPoint presentation, and there's different subjects on Sasquatch research in there, but today we're just going to kind of look into the stick structure, sign, and symbol of what some possible Sasquatch what they possibly do. Yeah. So basically, I started out in Wenatchee, like collecting reports and stuff. My mom worked for Wenatchee World for 32 years, 26 years. And my dad taught for 32 years. Sorry, I got that backwards. And so I was always intrigued and I started in 1988, I got my first story from a guy who had seen one when he was hunting up the Entiat Valley, and he'd seen it through his rifle scope, actually watched this thing. So that kind of opened up me locally going out and collecting and gathering stories from the local folks, and it was really amazing how many stories I came up with. It was like, I would talk to someone like, well, yeah, my dad or my brother saw this, or, cousin of this, or there's just a lot of people hunt and fish over there, so there's a lot of outdoorsmen, and there's actually quite a few people that seen or heard something over the years, so I started my own local database. Then I went into doing field research, which my whole life I've done field research because I'm an avid outdoorsman and I love the outdoors. I'm always camping, I'm always out in the woods. And then from the field researcher, I kind of moved on to what we call a citizen scientist. So my mentor is late Dr. John Bindernagel. For those of you who don't know him, just a remarkable man, remarkable researcher. I encourage you to get his 2 books if you're interested in this subject and read his books. John Bindernagel, or Noggle, depending on how you, and he just passed away this last year, and the work he's done is just, he's been a big influence on me. So what they call that is a citizen scientist, basically. So that's what I kind of call myself now, as a citizen scientist. And look, really that's all we can do, you know, at this point in humanity is go out, collect things the best we can. A lot of times, like John said, you know, he wouldn't even bring it out or talk about it. He'd put it on a shelf maybe for a later date, but you know, we still need to collect these things no matter what it is or whatever when it comes to this research. So as far as the stick structure end of things, this is kind of move, I guess that's, well, let me get to the page where it says that. And these, like I said, this is just part of my bigger, let me get up here. That's my neighbor's tracks right there. It's almost 4.5 feet, perfectly in line, but that's a human, so it's just interesting. Okay, right here. So go ahead and read that. Is it possible that Sasquatch break tree branches, configure forest materials, make markers for their own? Absolutely. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, all animals, all humans, we all use a language of some sort to communicate. You know, coyotes and wolves use scent trails for hundreds of miles, you know, and there's different ways to communicate. Some of the great apes, the bonobos and the chimpanzees, for instance, will take sticks and they'll actually place them at the beginning of a game trail to let the other chimpanzees and bonobos know what trail they took. So the comparisons with the great apes and the Sasquatch are really compelling, and there's a lot of similarities, and also with humans. But you've got to remember, humans are a great ape. We are in the great ape family. So we need to put aside humans, put aside animals, and just think Sasquatch. You know, what is the Sasquatch? You know, a lot of people are like, well, they're a little bit of human, they're a little bit of animal. Yeah, they could be, but I still think they're a Sasquatch, and there's probably attributes to them that are unique to them, and that's probably why we have not found them. You know, one of the simplest things could be something just within their physical makeup that's different than us. Well, we all have a pineal gland, right? You know what a pineal gland is, otherwise known as a third eye. Well, for some reason in humans it was calcified, you know, however long ago, and we can't use our pineal gland like we should be able to. Well, if a Sasquatch was able to use his, that would answer a lot of questions right there as far as why they can't be seen. Anyway, I just threw that in there for some reason. So there was, in the early days, some of the first stick structure or had to do with sticks was these breaks that some of the researchers would find like 6, 7, 8 feet up on a small tree, like a Christmas type tree, walking along a path or along the forest, and they would find these sometimes broken. They'd find them in the middle of summer. They weren't winter damage. You know, you can tell winter damage in the spring, and winter will do a lot of damage to trees, and they'll bend them, they'll do all kinds of things. I mean, but they were finding these, and they didn't seem like they were winter damage. So that was the first stuff that they found back in the 60s and 70s. And I always thought, you know, well, these Sasquatch, they got to be doing more than just leaving tracks out there, you know, walking around, being seen, leaving tracks. So of course there's other things that go on that we just didn't know until we started coming across some different configurations of what seemed to be like stick structures in association with other Sasquatch stuff, like tracks, sightings, you know, your vocalizations, and then they were finding these odd stick structures. So my first introduction to that was in 2005 in Granite Falls. I was contacted by a couple that owned 25 acres of private property up on a mountain above Granite Falls. And the wife had seen a Sasquatch twice on their property, and the son had seen it once, and the dad hadn't seen it. That sounds familiar. That happens a lot. Kids, women seem to see them first before the male does. I don't know what that all is about, but yeah, a lot of you guys might know that. And so we went up there, me and my partner, Vaughn, and decided to do an investigation. And they were nice, and they let us hike around their whole property and look around. And so we started hiking back on their property, and it was like immediately we started finding tracks. And the main thing that we started finding, yeah, signs, we need them, right? This is kind of the precursor. It's like humans, we're smart. Now think about this. If you were to wake up in the morning and we just pretend like the world didn't have any signs out there anywhere, and you walked out your front door and you get in your car, well, where do I go? I mean, literally, you wouldn't know where to go. You don't know that building over there is selling food in it. You know, you don't know that you need to go over there. I mean, we really need signs as people, as a human. We're pretty smart. So something like an animal or a Sasquatch, I would think that he would utilize some sort of signage and or artwork also. So we were back there hiking around, and we found what we described as these small teepee. This is my wife and our teepee on our property, by the way, over here on the left during the wintertime. If you've ever stayed in a teepee in the wintertime, it's great. You need to try it sometime. You should. You really should. And then you can see how the Indians lived 100 years ago. And yeah. And we were finding these small structures on their property. We found up to over 20 of these things on their property. And immediately the one thing that I noticed is there was usually a forked tree or a forked branch with other branches placed in the fork, and usually a horizontal stick going through the top. Just about on every one of them, it was like that. And these are all different. See, here's the horizontal one here. And these were definitely, yeah, for one thing, I've been in the woods my whole life, and you know when something's out of place or different, you know, you just do. You could grab that thing and like shake it and it wouldn't come apart. That's how strong they were. I mean, literally. And I was like, now, these are not natural. And with the amount of them that were back there, it was amazing. And we were finding tracks. So here's one of the tracks right here. I actually casted this track right here. It's hard to see, it's pretty dark, but the toes are up in this area. John Bindernagel has this track, and all 5 toes showed. And this was literally within feet of one of these small teepee structures. And then we were also finding this type of stuff, what I call upbreaks. You know, large branches broken upward. I'm still trying to get an explanation for that. So, and, you know, there's probably an explanation out there, who knows, but you know, it was, in the association with everything else, it was pretty bizarre. So then, you know, after the Granite Falls, we spent weeks, up to a month there. We went back numerous times. One of the things the lady did, it was rural property, and she had speakers installed on her porch, and she would stand out on her deck and sing. And they also ate a lot of fish, and they had fish on trails. And one of the sightings they saw was a Sasquatch going through their burn barrels. She thought trying to get the fish in trails. But she did stand on her deck and sing. And so, you know, people ask, well, what are these things? You know, to me, they could either be a type of sign, but they could also be a type of artwork. You know, it could be an appreciation for certain people, for certain things. I know for one thing, I'm a lifelong musician. I've played my guitar, you ask my wife Becky, since I was a little kid. I take it everywhere I go. I mean, in the woods, I've played in the woods my whole life, and I can tell you that music is a curiosity factor for the Sasquatch. Bottom line. You want to see a Sasquatch or get close to one, go out and play some nice music. Not all music. I think some music might be, yeah, and I'm not going to mention what kinds or whatever because that's not, yeah, just. So these are some of these small teepee type structures that I had found over the years that were really similar to different ones found in different locations. They also make really tall teepee structures, 20 to 30 feet tall, and they have a different meaning. So again, here's some more. Always placed like this, and there was always a horizontal one across the top too that I noticed, kind of like holding it in place. And then this is another thing. This was on Jim Henry's property. I wrote a song called Jim Henry's about a real guy that lived in Grays Harbor County. And Jim has had a lifetime of experiences up along the Hump Tulips River in Grays Harbor County. So we were in there one day driving down. In fact, this is where I had one of my best encounters, where one pushed a tree over, beat on its chest, screamed and roared, and then ran off from me and my friend. We were down on the Hump Tulips right on this property. But I drove by this one day and I go, Jim, did you see that X marker out there? And this leads right back to this den that he talked about where the Sasquatch would stay. And the river would be like over here. So it's just literally, it's kind of like in this pathway. And I mean, those were broken off and stuck in the ground. I mean, the homeowner didn't do it. Jim didn't do it. He'd never seen it. He didn't know. That other photo over there is too dark. So I think it's another X marker to show you. And then this was another thing that was a possible something that they possibly make, which I call a star pattern. This is on the Granite Falls property right here. And if you look at that, this is on the Quinault Indian Reservation near Taholah. And look at the similarity there. I mean, they're really similar. This one's a darker picture. I should have lit it up, but it's almost like an A with one going this way. Anyway, who knows? You know, again, you need to document this stuff, because the more people that document it, and then if we get other people, you know, finding this stuff, then maybe we're onto something. So some of the possible signs and symbols that I've found, or art, I like to call it art too because I really don't know what it is these small and large teepees, arches. So an arch is something that is really intriguing, and I'll show you here at the end. The main thing I want to talk about is about something that happened to me personally with these stick structures that made me, I mean, I was a believer in 2005 and on but what happened in 2000, I guess it's 13 now, pretty much changed my life on this, and just, it was so personal and directed to me that it's like, okay, something's really going on out there. So these arches, they'll sometimes take a stick that they'll find elsewhere and they'll stick both ends in the ground and they'll actually make an arch. Or there might be a branch coming off the top of the arch that they'll weave up onto another tree to hold that arch up, which happened here. Knotting, weaving and knotting. So that's something that I'm going to show you. X marker, star. Fencing is just where they'll take crudely and stick sticks in the ground, kind of in a row, but it's always in a perfect row like this. So I call it fencing. And then twisted broken sticks. A lot of times you'll actually see, instead of just a break, it looks like it was actually twisted more, and there's a twist to it. And anyway, just kind of talking more about how important sign or symbol would be for something like a Sasquatch. You know, that's what's out there is in the forest is wood and rocks and stuff, you know, and people are like, oh, they couldn't grab that branch and twist it. Well, why not? I mean, that's what's there, you know? So yeah. I mean, the golden arches, you know, you for a split second, you look at it and you know exactly what it is, you know? That's how important a sign or a symbol is. It's just boom, instantly, you know what it is. So yeah. Oh, okay. So this is another thing, and I'm not really going to talk about this, but Ron, it was interesting. You'd mentioned something about a sound that had 5 different octaves or whatever. So one of the recordings I got, so one of the things I do is me being a musician, I have a recording studio in my basement. I take my wildlife sounds, I put them into what's called a spectrograph. So a spectrograph actually allows you to visually, all animals have what's called a voice print. Okay, it's an actual thing that you can look at, which is these little blobs here. This is sound right here, all these little heavier spots. And it makes you visually look at a sound. And then also all known North American animals have what's called a hertz range. So, you know, humans hear from around 20 to 20,000. And all animals have a certain range that they're in. Here's your hertz range over here. And so when you take your hertz range and you take your voice print and you can put the two together and you compare them, well, then we can start figuring out what it's not, okay? I'll never say, well, that's a Sasquatch for sure, because we don't know. Obviously, we didn't see it open its mouth and go, ah, but a lot of the birds that are the bird people, they actually get birds put on the list from just recordings without them seeing them also. So, you know, there's something to that that could add to this at a later time. So the screams, anyway, I'm just going to let you listen to this one, and it's this one right here. So let me just explain real quick. I got this over at the Olympic Peninsula. Actually, it was at the Olympic Project headquarters up off 101. And this thing screamed, and it's definitely had 3 notes. It went like, ah, ah, ah. And it was like, whoa. But when I put it in a spectrograph, which is, you know, a spectrograph, it literally was a solid line. And that's one thing that we think with the Sasquatch. Here it is. Play that one more time. The first one's hard to hear. I'm not sure who that was, but anyway, on that recording, literally in the spectrograph, it's one solid line. And most of the Sasquatch calls that we get are around that 800 hertz, and it's always a solid line. There's not like, there should have been like discrepancies in there. Why was it solid? So play the next one. That's just the first. This is the first. Ooh, you can kind of hear it under the rumble there. And then play next page, play that one. Second note. No, that one. Yeah, second one. To the left. Left. It's all right. And then third. So that was all just one recording. And like I said, you know, when I put it in my spectrograph, it doesn't tell me that that's a coyote. It doesn't tell me that that's a cougar. It doesn't tell me that that's a bear. It tells me that's something I don't know what it is. In fact, there it is right there. That's the woo, woo, woo. Look how straight it is.
And were you picking this up? Had you heard the sound and then you decided to record it, or did you just have?
We were recording at the time. So that's one thing we do a lot is when we camp in wildlife, we all have our little recorders, and we definitely turn them on early, like around 7 o'clock seems to be a good starting time, because they tend to vocalize like early evening into the evening. And so sometimes, you know, someone might do, I don't do the calls anymore. You know, some people do whatever, try to do a call and get an answer, but I don't know what I'm saying to them. And I don't want to piss them off, because I've pissed them off before already when I invited some folks up from California into one of my camps, and they were really being rambunctious, and I think it pissed them off, and there were some bad things that happened that night. So for instance, what's that?
Have you heard this kind of sound before?
I have, yeah, but not with the 3 notes. So that's another thing with the 3 notes. So I'm a guitar player, so I go, well, gosh, what are those notes? So I got my guitar out, and I went, the first note, ding, okay, ding, ding. I went, whoa, that's a 1-4-5 progression. Any musicians know what that is. 1-4-5 is basically a blues progression. So it's 1-4-5 means it's the first note in a major scale, 4th note, 5th note of a major scale. So that's what those notes are. But if you look here on a barred owl, here's a barred owl. We'll just let you listen to this real quick and see it'll go whoop, whoo, and then it really dives off right there. So play that one just for a comparison. Oh, maybe I'm doing that. Are we? I'm not touching the button. Anyway, that's just kind of showing you the spectrograph here and how it did dive off there.
Yeah.
Just giving you a comparison with a known animal to the... okay, brain games. That was... that's a picture I got of a Sasquatch from 2 feet away. That's the drawing they did. If you want to look more into this, it is on Chris Murphy's site, the Sasquatch Canada site. There's a whole written report on this photo. That's the game cam photo right there. This picture was drawn 9 months before I got this, and then he overlaid the homeowner on there, and it matches almost perfect. Anyway, I won't explain any more about that because we got to get back into our stick structure. This is some... And that's a den, possible den. This is human. Humans always build real straight and neat compared to this possible Sasquatch. They're real messy, but they weave and do all kinds of weird stuff. Okay, so this is the main thing I wanted to talk about. So in 2013, I was up at this area that I've been going to for years. Kind of, I go and I camp, I bring my guitar, and I act like a normal camper. You know, really that's the best way to see a Sasquatch. You want to see a Sasquatch, you get close to one, don't go out looking for them. I mean, after all, who's the people that are seeing the Sasquatches? Well, they're people that are out picking mushrooms, they're people that are hiking, they're forestry workers, they're people out in the woods or doing whatever. So do those things, you know, enjoy your time out in the woods. Don't always thinking about Bigfoot. Go out in the woods, act normal, try to have a normal camp, and that is when things really happen, you know, whether you know it or not. Now, if in the back of your mind, of course, if you're thinking about it, then you got a better chance to know when something's going to happen. So I've been going to this area for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and was getting a lot of different types of normal Sasquatch activity, the screams, the wood knocks, trees getting pushed over near me, tracks found, wood knocks, I think I said wood knocks. So the year before I'd gone in there, and where I'd parked, right where I'd parked, I'd come back and I was the first one in there this year. It's an area I go up above Lake Wenatchee, and I'm always like one of the first ones in there, and I know I'm one of the first ones in there because I set cameras and do different things to know. And right where I parked the year before, there was a stick stuck in the ground, like right in this hard dirt to even get a stick stuck in the ground. I thought that was strange, didn't think much of it. Following year, we were in there, and I had brought my research partner up with me, and he's also a musician, and we'd decided to make a new camp. And so we went back in the forest on this level spot and cleared out an area and made a new camp, and I broke off some branches and just enough room to get my one-man tent in, and we built a fire pit and everything. And we'd been playing a lot of music in there, and we were in there, and it was 2 or 3 weeks later, we came back, same spot, came in there, and this is when all this stuff appeared. And it's might be kind of hard to see, but I'll explain this area. This is the area right here. So this thing right here, and I'll show you different pictures here, but this is an arch that goes up, and there's a branch off it that goes up here, and it's weaved around this branch. Well, this branch was pulled over. This is a Douglas fir to this tree, and this is a cedar, and they were weaved and knotted together so tight. This area I documented with pictures and video for 4 years, 4 winters. This is an area that gets 20 feet plus of snow a year. This is the small teepee right here, and there's a bunch of sticks sticking up right here. This stick was also stuck in the ground. So there's the arch again. This tree right here comes up, and they're literally weaved, and there's a knot Dmitry Bayanov from Russia, in his book, he talks about the Sasquatch over in Russia, and he says one of their favorite pastimes, I don't know quite how he got this information, but Sasquatch apparently in Russia like to make knots. So I thought that was really interesting that I had actually found a knot, and the strength of this is just unbelievable, that it could last that long. Even the small teepee lasted 4 years of getting 20 feet of snow on it, and it crushed it down a little bit, but it was still standing. So I'm pointing to the two trees that are weaved together. There's the knot right here. And there's the weaving right here. You can kind of see where it's weaved around. This thing kind of goes in and out. Oh, there it is. I mean, literally, you could take two people and pull on that as hard as you could, and you could not pull it apart. I don't think a human could do. I mean, you think about some of the stuff that these things can possibly do, and it's quite intriguing.
How high up was that?
It was only about this high, about 5 feet. So my one-man tent, I have a Hubba Hubba 1, which is a small tent. It's got one main pole, and I'll show you the measurements was literally from this end of the pole, from the arch to this end was almost exact. This is where my one-man tent was, exactly right here 2 weeks before. Exactly. No, I came back and our fire, so we'd buried our fire too, so you couldn't see the fire at all. We didn't want no one to know there was a fire or anything there. It was completely just dirt. Well, the first thing I walked up, the fire pit had been dug out. And there's stories of Bigfoots coming up to fire pits and actually digging up the coals and like sucking on the coals and stuff. So 2 weeks after I'd been there, we come back and all this stuff is like there. It was like my wife, the first thing she goes, well, I think they like you, Paul. I'm like, well, I hope so. So right at the base of where my feet would have been, which is right here, was another tree, and there was a small sapling here, and they were weaved together. Here's another picture of the knot. John Bindernagel spent a whole day here, and he was very intrigued with this. This changed my life. I mean, really, you got to wrap your head around this. So on this stick structure thing, that's the thing I tell people. It's like, I see a lot of people now just going out in the woods and they'll just hike around. Oh, there's an arch, man, a Sasquatch has been there. It's like, it don't work that way. There's so much natural stuff out there that will replicate exactly what a Sasquatch does. But, we all replicate lines and things, even in life, and humans do that when we build, the way you know is when you're in an area, or if you go to an area a lot, and then you see things change within days. That's when you know that something's happening. And that's what's happened to me numerous times. These things will appear or disappear within days, or they might stay for a long time. So there's the weaving of the two trees. You can see the cedar right there. One's cedar and one's Douglas fir. There's another shot of the whole site. Here's the arch. So this arch right here is alder, okay? There's no alder that grows up here. There's a creek behind us, about 50 feet, and that's where this piece of alder came from. So this alder was brought up, doesn't even grow here, broken off, stuck in the ground, and off the top of that alder, there's a branch that comes up, and it's weaved around this branch. It's like all these things are holding themselves up. It's amazing. And here's the small teepee. So that was right at the head of where my head would have been. There was fencing, there was stick stucks in the ground, and then this teepee, and I actually loaned this teepee to Chris. This is, I don't think they had room to put it up over here, but we made a demonstration model out of this. And again, you can see the forked tree right here, the other trees in here, and then this branch is the horizontal one that goes through here, right here. Now watch, it goes up like this, and it curves right here like this. Well, there was fresh dirt on this end, fresh. So whoever made this teepee pulled this branch out of the ground to put it in there. That right there is something else too. And on top of that, there was a track that was about 10 feet away from this right there. It didn't pick up all the toes, but most of the track was there, and I did cast this, and it came out pretty good. I've showed it to Meldrum. There's the site looking from the other side, so the creek's behind us now. The creek's back down over in there. So there's the arch. So my one-man tent I was right here 2 weeks before. This stick was also broken off and shoved in the ground. I mean, it's an amazing display of I don't know what, but I'll tell you, it really, really made me think about a lot of things.
They were asking you back?
Yeah, exactly. That's a year, yeah, it could be.
Do you have positive feelings about it?
You know, I do, but you know, since when we were here this time, 2 trees got pushed over around us, you know, so they're still pushing trees down, you know, so it's like, who knows, you know, but pushing a tree down might be that they're happy. You know, a lot of people say when they hear something bang on the side of their house and Bigfoot's bang on their side, well, that might just be like, hey, come out and play, you know, I want you to come out. So, again, we don't know all the...
How far from the trailhead was this? How far from civilization? So to speak?
This was deep into the Cascades. This is up near the crest of the Cascade Mountains, way up at the end of a remote valley, along a creek, one way in. So here's another close-up of the knot right here. I mean, this thing, see, there's the knot goes clear up there. It was literally brought around where it was, I've examined this thing for so long, I don't even know how it was done to this day. And the strength of holding those 2 trees together for that long in an area that gets the weather like it gets is just intriguing to me. This is kind of a side view looking at the arch right here again. Look at the branches off the arch, so coming up and wrapped around this. But these are separate trees. Okay, and then over here, I had broken off all these little branches right here just so I could get my one-man tent. And there's the site again. There's the fire that was disturbed right here. It almost looks like about the width of a big hand right there, too. You couldn't see any of this stuff. It was completely covered. All these coals were brought out into the open 2 weeks after we'd had our fire. And there's a good shot. So that's exactly where I was sleeping 2 weeks before all this stuff appeared. Literally, when I set my tent up before I put my tent on, the pole is almost exactly the same length from there to there and height-wise. And here's just some measurements. Someone was talking about some measurements. So that's the upper arch, what I call the upper arch, the 2 trees, and then the other arch was perpendicular to it. There's the small teepee and the fencing. There's the teepee again. So all these other sticks beside it were also stuck in the ground right here. You know, this stuff just didn't blow in within 2 weeks, and you know, weather did not do this. It was, there's the knot. Just an intriguing knot, and the way it held those 2 trees together. I mean, it was weaved, and then knotted. And there's me basically laying exactly where I was laying. You can see the teepee up at the head, the sticks. So this is an area I still go. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about...
When you went back to that site, did you camp there again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I still camp there. Yeah.
Did they fix it up for you again?
Nope. Like I said, I watched it and I documented it. I wish I would have now, in hindsight, I wish I kind of would have cut out. I was kind of afraid to mess with anything, to tell you the truth, because it was almost like it was a gift or something to me. And so I kind of just wanted to leave it and see how long everything would last. And so it got into the 4th winter, and the 4th winter, everything, it was gone. It was like everything was gone. But it took 4 years. But I did collect the small teepee. I didn't collect the knot and all that, and I kind of wish I would have, but I did collect the small teepee, and like I said, Chris, we've got it on display somewhere. It's got the original sticks in there and everything. You know, as an example, just to maybe see, because, you know, I'm not the only ones that are finding this stuff either. I mean, there's a lot of people that find this stuff in association with other evidence, you know. I mean, if I wouldn't have found tracks like in the first spot, Granite Falls, you know, if I wouldn't have found the other stuff, I probably would have written it off. But, you know, I always have a 2-piece rule of thumb anyway, you know, try to find at least 2 pieces of evidence in any investigation. Then you're maybe on to something, you know. But a Sasquatch they definitely, I think, utilize forest materials and do make stick structures for whatever reason. I think it could be artistic. I think it could be signs to other Sasquatch. I think, you know, there's a lot of possibilities. I mean, we do things for different reasons also. So anyway, that's about it. I don't know how much time we got. I can answer some questions. 5 minutes, so I'm pretty close. Yeah, so thank you guys. Questions? Yeah.
Have you ever tried to leave your own artwork there to see if there would be any response or make a similar structure?
That's a good question. Yeah. Basically, my artwork is my music. That's the main thing I do leave there as far as like me, and I think that's one of the reasons possibly that all that stuff appeared was the music. But that's a good question. I usually don't leave food. I've never been one to leave food because I don't know what they eat or something. But as far as leaving small trinkets or little things like that, yeah, you know, to do some experiments, that might be a good idea to maybe try something like that. Maybe even replicate a small teepee, you know, just to see, put it in a remote area and see what happens. Actually, we have done that. Haven't had any luck, but I haven't done it at this spot, so maybe I'll try that. Thank you. Yeah.
I don't remember where I read it, but bloggers and stuff wondering if markers were left as territorial markers, like leave us alone type of thing. Have you found anything like that?
Oh, yeah. I think the larger teepees that we find are territorial markers. So we find some that are like 20 to 30 feet up tall, and they'll often have an X, but they'll also look like a large teepee. Well, there's been a bunch of them kind of placed unnaturally, you know, and you look at them like, those logs look like they were on the ground at one time. You know, in fact, some of the logs I found have, you know, holes in them from the grubs and stuff where you definitely know they were on the ground. I've got a picture that's not on this, but I've got a picture of this huge log that you can totally tell was on the ground, and it was stuffed into the crotch of this tree, way out in the middle of nowhere, you know. So yeah, I think they do use territorial, possibly use them for territorial markers. Yeah, back there.
Do you think, I mean, we were wondering if the small structures are just the juveniles trying to recreate the big ones, because we usually do see them in the same area.
Possible, that is a possibility. I would stay open to that, yeah.
And my other question is if you were going to go out walking, because we see tracks a lot, but we don't know how to do a cast. You're not going to take a bag of concrete with you. So do you have like a mixture, like a baggie of a cup of stuff for water? I mean, what do you do so you can get a cast?
See, you're asking the right guy, because I do concrete. I do concrete work for my business. That's my business. So yeah, there's a lot of different materials. Hydrocal is really what they use, which is basically like what they make a garden material in. You can get it in most big cities. And you basically just mix it up. You don't want to mix it too thin, but you want to mix it like a pancake batter type thing, maybe a little, you know, a thin pancake batter. You can also use, at the hardware store, you can get a concrete mortar mix just in a bucket about this big, and that will work. Fix-All will work in the green sacks.
It's like your quickest set, so you're not there.
Yeah, okay, Hydrocal. Hydrocal is 20 minutes. That's what you want if you want your quickest set, and Hydrocal will it'll set up in snow. So I've done snow tracks, and even within a half hour, they're ready to go.
Awesome.
Yes?
Yeah, just mentioned to her, hydrocal, always wear rubber gloves because it will.
Yes, it is a chemical, and you want to protect your hands. Yeah.
What's the approximate size of the small teepees?
So we're finding those from about 2, 3, 4 feet high, you know, the smaller ones.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Are you running thermal at all?
Am I into thermal?
Are you running it as a detection device?
I do have a thermal device, but yeah, we use them for at nighttime for.
Have you located any Bigfoots using a thermal?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And have you tried to go up and meet with them?
Oh no. No, and you know, that's easier said than, you know, it's easy to talk about that in this room, but when you're out there in the real world and things are happening, it can be different. There's something, Bigfoot's definitely, it's happened to me, but Bigfoots can kind of, if they want, the Native Americans talk about this, but they can kind of hypnotize you for a time being, I guess. I don't want to use the wrong word, but they can kind of, like, you stay here. For instance, like if you're camped and you get up in the middle of the night and you got to go to the bathroom or whatever, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, they might be in your camp, and if they don't want you around, they'll, what other people call maybe like zap you or hypnotize you, kind of put you in a state. I know there's hikers or woodsmen that have been hiking along a trail, and then all of a sudden it's like they hit a wall. Everything's fine, birds are out, everything's cool, and then all of a sudden they just hit a wall, and it's like, nope, I'm turning around, and they turn around and go by the other way. They don't know why, but you know, it could be a number of things. Yeah.
Last question.
Stories, but about how tall are they?
They've been seen anywhere from 6 to 14 feet. Yeah.
I think that's our last question.
All right. Well, thanks, you guys. You guys are awesome audience. Yeah, thank you. Thanks.